Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. This lecture we're going to summarize what we've just learnt in section 2, so it's my exam tips lecture. So the very first thing you should understand going into the exam is to understand the 3 different models. So we had the CIA model, which was confidentiality, integrity, and availability, AAA model, which is authentication, authorization, and accounting, and then non-repudiation, which is where you can't deny that you did something. So the CIA model, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So confidentiality was identity access management and multi-factor authentication. It's basically how can you keep your your AWS account confidential. You don't want it to be open to the world. So those are some specific services that help you achieve that. We then had integrity. So we had things like certificate manager, which makes certain that our SSL certificates, or that it basically verifies that the organization that you're connecting with says who it is. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had SSL certificates issued. We also have things like our identity access management and bucket policies that control the integrity of our S3 buckets, for example. Moving on to availability, we used examples like auto-scaling and multiple availability zones. You could also have multiple regions, Route 53, you name it. Moving on to the AAA model. So AAA model standard for authentication, authorization, and accounting. So authentication will be things like identity access management. Authorization will be things like policies. Accounting will be things like CloudTrail. And then non-repudiation is simply to repudiate something, is to deny something. So non-repudiation is the ability of someone to say, to be unable to deny what it is they do. So we can use services such as CloudWatch, CloudTrail, IAM, and multi-factor authentication. The main one being obviously CloudTrail, and we will go on and set up a CloudTrail environment in the very next section of the course, and we're going to be doing a deep dive on CloudTrail in the very next section of the course. We then went to security of the AWS cloud, and we asked the question, how does AWS secure their stuff? And we saw that they do this through a whole bunch of different services, so physical environmental security, business continuity management, network security, AWS access, using secure design principles, as well as change management. We then asked the question, well, why should you even trust AWS? How do you know that they're actually doing what it is that they say they do? And the answer to that is they are part of various compliance programs. We will have a whole section on this later on in the course, but things like PCI DSS, it's certified to PCI DSS level 1, which means you can literally, take billions of dollars worth of transactions using the AWS platform, provided you get a gap audit by your QSA. Also things like ISO 27001, HIPAA is very big in the United States, which regulates how companies store health information. So we can trust AWS because they are certified by these independent bodies, and there's a whole bunch of different ones. If you want to go check out which, a body that's local to you, just go to aws.amazon.com/compliance. Next, we moved on to the shared responsibility model, and you have to have a strong understanding of the shared responsibility model in order to be able to pass this exam, and the model changes for different service types. So for infrastructure, you are responsible for your operating system, you're responsible for all the patching, the antivirus, etc. So things like EC2, EBS, whether or not your disks are encrypted, VPC, whether or not your security groups are open to the world or not, network access control lists, etc. Containers, that's where actually Amazon is responsible up to the operating and in some cases application layer. So RDS is a perfect example. They're responsible for patching the Windows and Linux servers that are running SQL Server and MySQL Server respectively. They're also responsible for patching SQL Server and MySQL Server. EMR and Elastic Beanstalk are other examples of container services. And then we have our abstracted services. So S3, Glacier, DynamoDB, SQS, SES. Essentially, you're only responsible for the data that's within these services. Amazon and who can access that. Amazon are responsible for the underlying physical infrastructure, guest operating systems, and applications that run them as well. We then looked at cloud controls. So we looked at visibility, auditability, controllability, agility, automation, and scale. And we went into AWS Config Manager and we set up some config rules. And then we basically, turn that service on so we could go in and have a look at all our AWS resources. So that's it for this section of the course, guys. The next section, we're going to start deep diving into various different services. It's going to be a mixture of theory as well as hands-on labs. So if you've got the time, join me in the next lecture. Thank you.